Hey Ash, what you doing?
Just going through this stuff. What is all this stuff? It's been here since like the Renaissance. Open acrylics, slow drying acrylics, Alkyds. Like, what is this? What is this? Water mixable oil color. That's an oxymoron. Like, what is all this stuff?
Well, wait around and find out.
Falsha!
And welcome back to our studio series. Today we're going to be talking about alternatives to painting with oils. And actually this is a question you get asked quite a bit in your online classes because they're using mostly acrylics today, aren't they?
That's right. A lot of my students are a little bit hesitant about making the switch from acrylic to oils for a number of reasons. Number one, they think that oils are a more challenging medium to work with. Number two, they're worried about the levels of toxicity associated with oil painting, so the solvents, the fumes. And number three, let's face it, cleaning up after oil painting is a little bit more challenging than cleaning up after your water-based mediums.
So we've talked about toxicity before in oil painting, and the fact of it is the most toxic thing that you're going to encounter is the solvent, which you use for underpainting and to clean your brushes. Now we use acrylics for underpainting, so we never use solvents. In fact, let me just see here. Here, how long have we had this? Years. So if you're not using it for that, then the other use is cleaning your brushes. And honestly, we don't use it for that either. And we just use soap, and soap works just fine.
If you are going to use solvents to clean your brushes, you're still going to have to wash the solvent out of your brushes with soap.
So you might as well just use soap anyway. All that aside though, people still look for alternatives to oils. So Aisling, what is there out there?
Well, the number one alternative to oils is acrylics, and most of my students use acrylics.
Yeah, they're convenient, they're fast drying, they're water soluble.
Which is great if you need that. If you need something fast drying, they're wonderful. But what if you have a big sky, let's say, and you're trying to do some work that's wet on wet? Acrylics are going to be very challenging when you're trying to accomplish something like this.
So there are retarding mediums you can get that will slow down the drying time of acrylics, but I find they make the paint transparent and you don't get quite the same rich texture. The other thing with acrylics is I just don't find that you get the rich dark colors that you do with oils out of the tube. If you compare the acrylic cobalt on the left here with the oil equivalent on the right, you can see the oil is much darker and richer out of the tube.
I mean, you can achieve a little bit more richness in your acrylic paint by adding something like a glossy varnish after the fact, but it's just not the same.
No, it's not. So, acrylics are drying too fast for you. What alternatives do you have?
Well, Golden has a line of acrylics called open acrylics, and they do dry significantly slower than conventional acrylics, but not as slow as oil paints. Seems like a perfect solution.
And yet, there they've been, sitting in that drawer down there for the past few years. Why? And the answer for me is, you just cannot get a nice, thick, impasto, juicy paint with these things. They're just too thin. You couldn't ever use a knife with them, for instance. So Ash, what else is on the market?
Well, another really popular alternative is water mixable oils.
So the next two alternatives we're going to talk about are not really alternatives to oil painting because they're both oil paints, but they differ from traditional oil paints in important ways. So, water mixable oils. We know water and oil doesn't mix, so what kind of voodoo is this, Aisling?
Sometimes they're called water soluble oils, but that's also not quite right. What you have is a paint that has a binder that's been chemically treated that allows the oil and the water components of the paint to emulsify.
Ah, emulsion. So it's interesting. Back in Ireland, you know that normal latex paint you'd use on the walls? We would call that an emulsion. In fact, that's what it would say on the can. It's not a term that's used in North America a lot, but that is what the word we would use just to describe normal wall paint.
So all of that means really, what the emulsion part of it means is that you've got the water and the oil are sort of suspended in each other. There's no actual chemical reaction. It's not the same thing as putting sugar in water where they completely dissolve chemically. It's more like mayonnaise.
So what are these water mixable oils like to work with, Aisling?
Well, the best way to work with them is to sort of treat them like oil paints. Don't use water at all unless you're sort of washing up after. If you are going to use water, use lots of it. You can use it to really thin out the paint and get beautiful washes of color, but using a little bit of water sort of causes the paint to seize up. It gets gummy, it gets sticky.
Sounds delightful. So, well, what if I do need to cut the paint? If not water, then what do I use?
Well, if you are treating them like oils, you can use an oil-based medium like liquid. They work very, very well. They are oil paints. If you are going to try and preserve the water mixable feature of the paint, you're going to have to use specialized water mixable mediums to thin them out.
And do they dry any faster than regular oils?
Maybe a little bit, not significantly faster, but they are oils. They are not like acrylics. They are not like open acrylics. They are going to dry much slower.
So you can't really use water, and they don't dry much quicker than regular oils. Sorry, what was the point of these ones again?
Really, it's about the wash-up, the convenience of the wash-up.
Okay, fair enough. What about these last ones?
Okay, what do we have here? We have an Alkyd. What is an Alkyd?
So your bottle of liquid is an Alkyd. It's an oil, just like walnut oil or linseed oil. The difference is that this stuff was dug up out of the ground. It's a product of the petrochemical industry. It's not organic. It happens to dry faster than those other oils.
Okay, so if I take regular oil paint, remove the linseed oil, for example, and replace it with something like an Alkyd, like this liquid, I will have a fast-drying oil paint.
That's exactly right. Sounds perfect, doesn't it?
It does.
So why have they been lying in my drawer for the past God knows how many years? The reality is, you can't get the nice texture that you can with regular oils. It's hard to build up an impasto. And availability, it's a limited range to begin with. And even getting those is really hard. I just checked recently and it's almost no colors available at all. So you can try them, but you will be frustrated by the lack of choice in colors.
So it sounds like you can boil this down into two things. So trouble getting good texture with the Alkyds,
Yep.
and availability on the market for your ranges of colors.
That's about it.
So really every medium has its compromise, even oil paints.
Yeah. Oils take forever to dry and there's lots of wash up.
Acrylics dry too fast, doesn't leave a lot of opportunity to work wet on wet.
Open acrylics don't give you that nice body and texture that you often want.
Water-soluble oils get gummy when you start adding a little bit of water.
And honestly, alkyds are just hard to find. That's why it's so hard to find a cheerful fortune teller.
What?
Because it's hard to get a happy medium. Bye.